All right, listen up. Intel from G2 and the recon team embedded within the city shows that we're up against one of the best defenses known to man. A two-tiered wall system along the perimeter that's impenetrable and heavily guarded at all times. Nobody's allowed in or out without explicit clearance from the main gate. The mission is simple. Capture the king, exfil back to the fob. Once we have the HVT in our possession, the city will surrender. And that, ladies, is Operation Jericho. Any questions?
Guys, why is it dark in here?
Because it looks cool.
Is that a claymore? Literally a claymore. What are we doing? Guys, come on. We've been over this, y'all. This is not Operation Jericho. Operation Jericho is we're gonna walk around the walls of Jericho for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, we're gonna walk around 7 times, we're gonna blow our horns, and the walls are gonna come down. I do not know what is so complicated about this.
I know, but that plan is stupid.
It's not my plan. It came straight from the top. Take it up with him. I don't know what you want me to do about it. And besides, like, we're pastors at a local church. What are we doing? She's the actual receptionist at our church. This is, guys, you're in slides.
I was gonna change.
K-Peck is the only one who knows anything about this, and he was in the military 20 years ago. Guys, your burlaps are in your lockers, your horns are there, get them on, meet me at the trucks, 0500. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm a huge fan of a well-made war battle movie, especially those that are rooted in history. I don't know what's on your list, but my list includes movies like Lone Survivor or the series Band of Brothers, which I've watched several times, Hacksaw Ridge, 13 Hours, Dunkirk, Rambo's First Blood. Okay, I know Rambo wasn't real, but the Vietnam War was real. It doesn't have to be on your list, but it's on my list. The point is, those movies, and more importantly, the history behind those movies, includes a battle plan or an attack plan or a rescue plan or an invasion plan. And those plans always have at least some of the same elements. They have weapons to take out the enemy, supplies, a communication plan, a soldier deployment assignments, medical teams for treatment and evac of the wounded. Every military conquest, successful or otherwise, begins with a detailed plan of attack and the adrenaline that comes in the moments that lead up to that attack, which is why what makes what we just saw utterly ridiculous. You will never see a war movie with a scene like that, I promise, where the ranking officer walks into the war room and tells everybody to skip the weaponry and grab an instrument. Holster your horn. Grab a guitar. Some of you have figured out where we're going to look, what we're going to look at today, and others of you might not have any idea what just happened. I promise we will leave no man behind. We're in the second week of our Called Out series, where we're looking at these 3 critical pivot points in the acquisition of the promised land by the people of God, led by Joshua, their leader. This is the same land, the promised land, where the nation of Israel exists today, more or less. And its history for the Jewish people dates all the way back to some of the earliest moments in the Bible, particularly Genesis chapter 12, when God taps on Abraham's shoulder and says, I'm going to make your people a special people. I will deliver you to the promised land, and through you and your descendants, all people on earth will be blessed. A lot has happened since Genesis chapter 12, including what we first looked at last week, when God instructs the people as they under Joshua's leadership as they get to the dangerous Jordan River and it's flooding. And they have to move. They are required to move. The only way they can conquer is to move in faith, trusting God. And when they do, God literally holds back the water from the raging river, and they walk through the middle of it on dry ground. It was a critical lesson of what it looks like to follow God and to trust God. So I don't always say this, but look, if you missed last week here, you need to go back and you need to catch up. After the people that Joshua leads crosses the Jordan River, they are technically in the promised land, but it still belongs to someone else. They might have thought that the crossing of this raging, impossible river was the hard part, but what they face now, as soon as they step on the other side, is truly even more impossible. This place called Jericho. Jericho was a fortress. It was a well-secured, fortified city that was controlling of all the main highways. So it was a must-have. Until Jericho belonged to Joshua and his people, the rest of the promised land never would. They had to conquer Jericho. So God told them to move into the promised land. That was clear. They had clear direction from God about that. The problem was that Jericho was virtually impenetrable. Jericho was surrounded by this wall, this massive wall of stone. It was 5 feet thick and it was 15 feet tall. Well, the people of Jericho had heard about the Israelites. I mean, they were legendary. At this point, God had been working in miraculous ways, including the parting of the Jordan River, but not just that. So they heard that the Israelites were on their way, and therefore they closed the city gate tightly. The city was completely sealed. What God wanted for his people, what God wants for us, is to not see obstacles, but to see God working through them, to see the opportunity that might be in front of us. God wanted his people to trust him, and he wants that still. So God tells them a plan. He knows they need a plan. This is the plan. Now, the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. And what I just said, they had heard about all the legendary stuff that had been happening. So they heard about the Israelites. So they sealed up the city. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men." We've got this picture now of God and Joshua. They're kind of surveying the city. And Joshua walks around the massive wall, and he realizes there's not a crack anywhere. There's no weaknesses in the wall. There are no loose stones in the wall. It's as secure as any fortress he's ever seen. And there really is no way Joshua and his troops are going to get through it with their own strategy or their own power. I want you to pause for just a minute and see it with me. If you've been around for a while, you know I like to live into the scene. I like to see it and see if I can feel what they feel and sort of imagine the scene. So do that with me. From a distance, they cross the Jordan River. Jericho's in front of them, but it's still a good ways away. From a distance, Joshua sees the city and he smiles. He's sort of salivating the imminent victory. I mean, it's a city, sure, and it has a wall, okay. But from here, it doesn't look that bad. You know how this works, right? I mean, from a distance, obstacles look smaller. They look different. They're less intimidating. I've been thinking about my trip to Alaska in 2012. I talked some about it last week. I don't know why it's been on my mind a lot, but when we were there, we wanted to drive. We decided to go to Denali National Park and to see Denali Mount Denali, which is the namesake of the park. And Denali's the tallest mountain in North America. It's 20,320 feet high. It's this massive protrusion of granite that got displaced by the Earth's crust from some shifting tectonic plates, forever ago. And the mountain is so big that you can see it from Anchorage, which is 130 miles away. And from there, it doesn't look that big at all. In fact, we flew into Anchorage, and when we got there, we rented our car, and as soon as we got to the car, and as soon as we left the parking garage, we started scanning the horizon. We were looking for the mountain, and we caught a glimpse of it. And we were in Anchorage, and the mountain's way over there, and we see it, and it's so cute. It's so precious. It's so sweet. Then we started driving towards it, and the closer we got, the more we ditched all those tame adjectives, and we started to use descriptors that gave the mountain the respect that it was due. From a distance, anybody could climb that thing. From a distance, anybody could conquer that thing, but up close, it was really insurmountable. was completely intimidating. It was only safe to observe from afar. That's what happens with Joshua. From far away, he sees the city. He says, it's doable. It's not so bad. No problem. But the closer he gets, his smile turns serious, and then it gets concerned. His brow creases as he touches the wall, and he realizes this is just not possible. And God says, which I've already read to you, but look at it with me again. God says, it's in that moment now, God says, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men. This is funny in case you don't know. Like Joshua's looking at this thing, it's completely impossible. And God says, see? And Joshua's got to be thinking, see what? All he could see was with his human eyes. And all he could see is that they've come so far, they've gotten so close, but the dream would die with him and his people outside of Jericho, which means they would never conquer the promised land. Have you ever pursued something and you got so close, you could taste it, only to realize that your dream was going to remain a dream forever? Many years ago, I ran my first and my last 10K. I hated running then, like I hate running now. I only do it when I go to the gym. I run every day for 28 minutes. Some people say, what's the magic about 28 minutes? I say, because that's as long as I'm ever willing to run. Not 1 second more. If I died, forgive me, if I died and went to hell, my eternal torture would be to run every day for the rest of eternity. Running is just like that. For those of you who love running, I just want to say with all, I just love you. What is wrong with you? I don't really understand that. Anyway, I had heard that there were lots of people in our church that were running in this race and that there were 30,000 other people that were going to be there. And I didn't care about running. I still hated it, but I thought with that many people, it sounds like a massive party that I don't want to miss. Still, if you're going to do something, you got to do it right. And if I'm going to be in a race, the whole point of a race is to what? To win. So I trained for at least a week. Maybe a little longer, I don't know. And I watched the Karate Kid series, like all the movies for inspiration. And the morning came and we got there and I was pumped and I was excited. I'd had a couple of donuts, so, I had a little bit of the stuff. And so then we were there on the starting line and they fired off the shot and we took off and the first mile was cake. Everybody was smiling and happy and I was running faster than everyone, which is the whole point. By the second mile marker, a few former runners were now walking. Not me, though. I was going to win. The party ended for me somewhere around the third mile. There were not nearly as many people smiling, including me, a lot more walkers than runners now. I told my wife, Susan, she was running the thing with me, that anytime she decided she wanted to walk, it would be all right with me. I was there to support her, too. We were partners. I would not leave her behind. Secretly, I was trying to hide the dry heaves, which kept swelling up inside of me. I literally thought I was going to die, which would have been a welcome development in that moment. I started to pray for such a thing. She didn't bite on the walking. I don't know why. So I had to go to plan B. I spotted up ahead a row of porta potties, and I said, I got to go. I'm sorry. I just need to do that. I walked slowly to it as if I didn't really need to be there, locked the door behind me, and fell into it like it was the honeymoon suite at the Marriott. When I came to, I walked out like I'd only been in there a couple of minutes and started running again. And at that point, I start scanning the crowd. I'm looking for two reasons. First, if I saw anybody I knew, I made sure to start running faster and smiling again, because image, And secretly, the second reason is I was hoping to find somebody that I knew from our church who had a good grasp of sanity and was walking or crawling or sitting, preferably near a paramedic tent that had an oxygen tank and some nebulizers. Finally, we find the 4th mile marker. We only had 2 to go. We started running again, slowly at first, and then we went faster and faster, and then I saw it in the distance, the finish line. And I could hear the Rocky theme song in my head as I got closer and closer to it. And I stepped under the threshold of that banner and I felt like I had won the gold medal. Out of 30,000 people, I placed 15,009, which means, I know I didn't win, but I did beat 15,000 other people. And I felt pretty good about it until I checked the leaderboard and learned that I was defeated by 81-year-old Iris Vinegar from Raleigh, North Carolina. She beat me by 7 minutes. So it was my first and last 10K. I just quit running. Starting is easy, finishing not so much. Giving up when we face something that seems to be impossible, that appears to be the rational, reasonable, self-preserving thing to do. But what is impossible with you and me? It's nothing for God. He made the world out of nothing. He can conquer anything that's in front of us. So when God waved his hand and he said to Joshua, see, do you see? I have delivered Jericho to you. I've delivered its king and its fighting men. He was trying to inspire Joshua. He was trying to inspire the people. He was saying, listen, I've already done this. You don't need to believe in yourself. Stop that. Believe in me. God could see it even when they couldn't. You and I, we live in the present. We don't have any choice about that. We're bound by time. We can't look over the threshold and into tomorrow, but God can. And God saw not just what was in that moment, but what would be in the next. Still, God knew that his people needed some kind of battle plan, so he gave them one. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. I'm going to pause there and say, we looked at this last week. If you weren't here, this would be a little, just go back and watch. The ark was super important. You'll remember, it went in front of the people as they crossed the river. Now it would be in front of them as they circled the city of Jericho. Importantly, it was to denote that God was the one they were following. He's always the one they're following. So the ram's horn in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout, and the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go up, everyone straight in. They did this for 6 days. I gave you some excerpts here from Joshua chapter 6. You could read that on your own. You should sometime. But for the sake of time, I just kind of had to abbreviate it. What we're looking at here is God's clear instruction to Joshua and his people for taking the city of Jericho. And those instructions went like this. Let me just paraphrase it for you one more time. For 6 straight days, the army would follow the 7 priests blowing the 7 trumpets, and the only thing that the army would do is march around the city, the circumference of the city, the whole city, 1 time every day for 6 days. The whole city's only like 10 acres. So this march is not going to take all day. It just takes a little bit. And I want you to think about what the people inside of the city are viewing and imagining as they're watching all this happen. They've got to be thinking, what in the world do these crazy Israelites think they're doing? They're marching around 1 time, blowing some horns? I bet some of the people of Jericho were even laughing at them. It makes me think about ideas that people would laugh at along the way. It's fun search if you ever want to do something like this. I had fun just kind of imagining, looking up some of these real life stories. In fact, this one, leading up to Christmas 1975, I was just a little kid. This guy named Gary Dahl had this idea. And his idea is that he would market as a Christmas gift for anyone to buy a pet rock. You could buy your family and your friends a pet rock, which Gary, part of his marketing strategy was to say this: you should get a pet rock. It's less likely to die or run away than a normal pet. They packaged these rocks, kidnapped from the beaches of California, in these boxes with this very soft bedding so that the rock would not be harmed or injured on its way to you. That Christmas, he sold 1 million pet rocks for $4 a piece. Today, you can still buy a pet rock on Amazon for $30. If this idea didn't exist, imagine no one had ever thought of it and you didn't have any history behind it, and some friend invited you over and said, I know it's early in the year, but look, I want to make this pitch to you. I got this idea. I'm going to make a lot of money, and we're going to do this thing for Christmas, and I want you to go into business with me. And they pitched you the idea of a pet rock. You would laugh them out of the room. But Gary laughed all the way to the bank. He became wealthy on an idea that never should have worked. Or how about this one, a little bit more serious? The first life jacket was patented in 1765, but they weren't widely used. They were considered unnecessary, especially by people who were really good swimmers, especially among those people in the rescue community. They were called lifeboatmen back then. But in February 1861, there was this massive storm, and it wrecked about 200 ships off the coast of England. And this guy named Henry Freeman, he knew that this was a moment of great peril. This is actually the real Henry Freeman here. He tried to convince the fellow rescuers, the other lifeboatmen, that this operation was seriously dangerous and that all of their lives were at risk. He begged them to wear one of these cork first-generation life jackets like he has on here, and all of them refused. At the end of the rescue, Henry was the only lifeboatman who survived. They laughed at him to their own demise. This kind of phenomenon, this kind of thing that seems silly but really isn't, that's a thing that goes all the way back maybe even to Noah, when his ark building venture seemed utterly ridiculous, literally worthy of ridicule, until it rained and rained and rained. You and I, we often follow God against the tide, against modern thinking, against conventional wisdom. And to be sure, God's direction is often unreasonable from our perspective. And that's why we have to see what God sees. It's why God says to Joshua, see this? This is already done. He wasn't asking Joshua to see with his own eyes. He was asking Joshua to see with God's eyes. So, for 6 straight days, one time every day, the army followed the 7 priests, blowing the 7 trumpets behind the ark, one trip around the wall of the city. But the 7th day was different. On the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except on that day, they circled the city 7 times. So on the 7th day, when they completed the first circle and they returned to where they started, instead of calling it a day like they had all the days before, they started a second lap. No soldier making a peep or a sound of any kind. All you could hear was the marching and the horns playing, the ominous sound of an army circling outside of your little castle. The ridicule of the people inside the city probably turned to a little nervous laughter. Something was different on this day. The second lap complete, the army started on a third. The horns still playing, the ark still shining, the faces of the soldiers increasingly resolved. The second lap turned to a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and then a sixth, and then the 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And when the trumpet sounded, the army shouted. At the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. And so everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. You know why victory came to the people of God that day? It was not because they walked around the wall. It was not because of their horn-playing prowess or their proficient and perfectly timed marching skills. The reason that they were successful was because they followed God's plan for victory instead of their own conventional plan for victory. Many years later, one of Jesus' earliest and most passionate followers would write these words. It was the Apostle Paul. He said, so let us not grow weary in doing what is right. I'll come back to that in a second. For we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up. This right here is an if-then proposition. If we will follow God, in doing what is right. Doing what is right is always doing what God wants, the way he wants it. If we'll do that, if we'll follow God wherever he leads, then God will deliver the harvest. The harvest then is completely dependent on committed obedience, which is what it means to push through weary moments and difficult, impossible seasons where there's laughter around you, people are ridiculing you, there's rejection. The army had to walk around the wall 13 times in 7 days. This might not have required a lot of physical endurance, but it required a ton of spiritual perseverance. And then, after that, with a sweep of God's hand, the impenetrable tower of rock became an insignificant heap of rubble. If you trust God, if you'll do what he tells you, the way he tells you, when he tells you, like a loyal soldier, you'll follow the plan of your superior officer and never quit. And if you do that, God will deliver. He can break down the walls that are in your way, the way that he broke them down for Joshua and his people at Jericho long ago. I want you to think about the soldiers, hundreds of thousands of them really, trained for war, trained for combat, manly men who ate things before they were dead and pushed hard and trained hard and worked hard. But instead of shooting arrows and swinging swords, they were told to just march, just listen, just watch, just wait. Can you imagine what would have happened if they had given up after, say, day 4? Can you hear the conversation? We're not told about any of this, but I can only imagine somebody had to think. Maybe somebody whispered to the soldier next to him, look, this is ridiculous. This plan is dumb. This wall's not going to come down by itself. We need a battering ram. We need some explosives. We need to shoot some flaming arrows over the wall. But God had told them to march, just march, and don't make a sound. Not a peep or a whimper or an evil look at the enemy. Just walk today, tomorrow, the next day, 6 days in a row, and then 7 times on the 7th day. Can you imagine how incredibly hard it would be to keep trusting God, to keep going through that day after day? Actually, I can. 16 years ago, I came as close as ever to giving up. I really believed with all that I had that God had called me here, that he had created this movement that we call PCC, that he was changing people's lives. I could see it happening. I knew all of that to my core, but we faced a wall. It was what appeared to be impenetrable. We were in the middle of an aggressive building project for our very first building, and we had major trouble with the builder, who we ultimately fired before the building was finished, and we ended up in a lawsuit, and all construction stopped, and we had already borrowed over $1 million, and we had this shell of an unusable building that was deteriorating in front of our very eyes, and we were making payments on it while we were renting another place. Oh, and about that time, this is like 2009, the economy crashed. Some of you were around and remember then. It was utterly awful. And so those two things combined together, we had to lay off staff members and do furloughs and cutbacks in ministries everywhere. I had to tell some close friends who had walked through fire to make our church happen, who loved Jesus and bled what we do. I had to tell them I didn't have a spot for them, that they just needed to go somewhere else. There was nothing nice, nothing fun about any of it. Oh, and people in the broader community who weren't necessarily a part of our church but had heard about all the trouble, they were making things up, adding a whole lot of fiction to a little bit of truth just to make it good and juicy. It was excruciating. And I prayed every day that God would let me quit. I'm not exaggerating. I began my day every day begging God for permission to leave. I didn't want to walk around the city anymore. The wall appeared to be permanent to me. I had no expectation that it would ever come down. Every day was drudgery and pain. There wasn't a lot of smiling happening. Most of our staff just kind of went to their corner and hid. Long meetings with lawyers. We were in a place that just felt hopeless. I can't tell you how close I came to bailing, but I kept hearing the voice of God say, you will not quit. You must keep going. You're going to keep marching, if you will, around that wall, and then I'll take it down. I had to persist in doing my part so that God would do his. I had to trust him that if God brought us to the promised land, and if we had seen him perform miracle after miracle after miracle, that he was not going to leave us to fail because of one stinking wall that looked impossible to us, no matter how big it was. I've thought about that many times. How close I came to missing the blessing that I ultimately got to be a part of, but I had to trust God, even when it felt impossible. What would you and I be reading about in the Bible today if Joshua and his people had quit when God hadn't delivered Jericho after day 3, or after the march on day 5, or after the 4th time around the wall on day 7? Well, they would have been honorable mentions. They would have given up when they were so close to victory. I think that's what you and I do so many times. God calls us to persist, and he makes us a promise. He has every intent of turning your insurmountable wall into a pile of rubble, but your faith falters, and your trust trembles, and your wall still stands. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Israelites, when they stood at the base of that enormous wall and they stared at the impossible, instead of giving up, they looked up to God. They did what he said, even though it was crazy and unconventional, even though it flew in the face of every reasonable military strategy, even though the people of Jericho laughed at them and mocked them. And because they trusted God, instead of being forgotten, they conquered the promised land. And the history that we are experiencing still today is a part of that story. This is the story of Jericho. That when God makes you a promise, he is going to bring the walls down. So what walls are you facing right now? A marriage? A relationship? A hardship? A financial struggle, a failure, or a history that disqualifies you in everybody else's eyes? Listen, if God brings you to the wall, listen to his voice, do what he says, and if you do, he'll turn that mountain of rock into a pile of rubble. But you've got to follow him. You got to press on, and don't give up. The breakthrough might just happen on your very next turn.
With the enemy. Ooh, build myself a double thick stone tower, lies higher than the eye can see. Trapped Jericho walls gotta come down, come down. All my fears like Jericho walls gotta come down, come down. Oh, my prison turns to ruin when you're losing. All my fears like Jericho walls come down, come down, come down. All of my fears gotta come down. Jericho walls gotta come down, come down, come down.
No matter what wall you're facing, if you'll keep marching, God will turn your mountain of rock into a pile of rubble. Just like He did at Jericho, God wants to bring your wall down. So keep marching forward and watch what He'll do. So thanks for being here today. I hope you'll come back next week as we finish our Called Out series. Bring a friend, and we'll see you then.